Thank you. Well, thanks for everyone for coming along, and thanks to Mouvo for having me. It's been a really joyful time so far. This talk is called Broke, Burned Out and Brutally Online. It's using space in quite an abstract way, but about making space for mental well-being. This is just a picture of my dog. This is my dog Tiffany. My name's Emily, but you knew that already. So why am I talking about mental well-being? Well, I'm going to tell you all the reasons that you shouldn't listen to a word I'm saying. I am not a doctor. I am not a therapist. I love stock imagery, though. I'm not an academic. I'm not Freud. I'm not even a graphic designer like these people. They're having so much fun there. I am a journalist, as was pointed out, so here's some of my favourite journalists from the silver screen. So why am I talking about this? Well, I've always had an interest in kind of creativity and mental health, and it's something that when I was at a website called Ion Design, I oversaw their design and mental health strand, so talking about things like anxiety, the links between creativity and depression, insomnia, agency culture and drinking. And when I was at a website called It's Nice That, I wrote a feature that was super interesting to write and to research, which was about kind of the different drugs that creatives and drugs that creatives and artists are using and why. It was a real mixed bag, if you're interested. But I think the piece that I wanted to introduce this talk with is this one. We need to talk about how we talk about creativity and mental health, because I find it endlessly frustrating how this is discussed. One of the big things that is a bugbear of mine, controversial perhaps, but World Mental Health Day can fuck off. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to swear, so I've got this slide now. But why am I saying that? Is it because I don't care? Is it because I don't want people to talk about it? No, it's because it's not a kind of... I think when we talk about mental health in a way that so often is around World Mental Health Day, which is on the 10th of October, if you're interested in that. I just find there's so many very self-congratulatory kind of LinkedIn posts and Medium blogs, and the kind of creative director suddenly talking about when they were once a bit anxious or quite sad. And it's all very flippant. It feels like they're kind of co-opting mental health conversations for social media kudos for kind of marketing and stuff like that, and I find it really quite flippant and quite dangerous, to be honest with you. So there's either that side of things, or there's the side of things where the idea of this kind of romanticized notion of a creative genius, a tortured artist almost, is also still really, really popular, and that kind of frustrates me. Another thing that frustrates me is when we conflate kind of mental health, mental wellness, madness, eccentricity, all of this stuff. This is not promotion, by the way, because even if you did buy my book, I wouldn't get any money for it because I'm a terrible business person, but we'll come on to that later. But I wrote a book a few years ago called Great Minds Don't Think Alike. I didn't come up with the tagline, but I do find it very annoying. Discover the method and madness of 56 creative geniuses. And it was about people's creative processes. But the method and madness thing, yes, it is an idiom as well as a little alliterative phrase, but I think it kind of just perpetuated that idea of madness and being a bit eccentric and people with quite serious mental health problems all being put in the same bag. I think it's quite telling that my editor, when I was writing about Sylvia Plath, the poet's creative process, I wasn't allowed to mention how she died, so I think that probably tells you quite a lot. But there is no doubt that a lot of artists kind of were at their most prolific or at their kind of almost peak sort of quality-wise when they were having, I suppose, what we'd term in the modern day when they were having quite severe sort of mental health issues, things like, psychosis or manic episodes. This is the work of Louis Wain, who was a Victorian artist who painted some really cute cats. He was, when he was fairly young actually, committed to, what was back then a mental asylum. But it's interesting to trace his art as he got more and more unwell and was like tried out on different treatments and things. His cats got more and more abstract and psychedelic. Sorry, ASMR. This guy really annoys me. I know another controversial opinion here, don't lynch me afterwards, but Salvador Dali, he just makes me think of, you know, those people that are like, I'm so crazy, and they're really not very crazy. It's like, oh, what if we got an elephant, but it had like really thin legs? Or what if there was loads of ants everywhere, and what if the clocks melted? You know, do you know what I mean, those kind of people? I find them very annoying, and he reminds me a bit of that. Maybe that's a terrible thing. He's the kind of guy that would have like, you don't have to be mad to work here, but it helps mugs, or you know, the people that replace their personalities with like fancy dress parties, those kind of people. Maybe I'm being a bit of a bitch. I tried to find some articles or studies that linked mental illness and creativity, and there's really not very much out there. One of the few pieces I did find was this from The Guardian back in 2015, so it's not even very current, to be honest. But it implied that creative people were 25% more likely to carry genes that raise the risk of bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. But just as much as the article's headline suggested that, the bulk of the piece actually argued against the idea of there being a link between mental illness and creativity. A lot of the sort of quotes were from a guy called Albert Rothenberg, who's the professor of psychiatry at Harvard, and he was saying that he described Van Gogh as someone who happens to be mentally ill as well as creative. And then he went on to say, creative people are generally not mentally ill, but they use thought processes that are, of course, creative and different. So, something to think about there. So all this lengthy preamble is to say, this talk is called How to Be as Mentally Well as Possible in the Creative Industries, which is snappy, I know. So we're talking about being mentally well, we're not talking about mental illness, and we're not talking about madness or, you know, sort of conditions that might be treated in like a medical context. You should, some of you anyway, have, thanks to my glamorous assistants, some cards. So we're going to use the cards now. I know this is all a bit primary school, but it's a fairly easy question. Feel free to not answer or to give your cards to someone else if you don't want to. How are you? No, really, how are you? If you're good, raise your green. If you're all right, raise your yellow. If you're not good, red. Oh, this is very positive, isn't it? And who works in the creative industries? Ah, okay. That is actually lovely. I'm so glad you are all good, but you completely go against everything that I'm going to be talking about now. So, yeah, stop being so blooming happy. Because we did a survey, so the team at Mouvo are working on lots of research around this topic, and I also did some research, kind of put some questionnaires out to creative industry types. Here's some really happy people who've done a survey. And the results were absolutely not what we've found here. We asked people if, at some point during their creative career, did they have to take a break or radically reshape their creative practice due to mental health reasons. So the results were quite staggering. About 44% of people said yes, they did. 19% strongly agreed. So 63% of people in total agreed or strongly agreed that they'd had to sort of change up their career or take a break from it due to mental health reasons. So why are people in the creative industries so seemingly disproportionately affected when it comes to mental health? I think one of the big reasons is conflating your creative work with your identity. I think this is something that a couple of the speakers this morning have touched on as well. But it's very easy for your work to become your personality, or not necessarily actually your personality, but to see yourself as a creative. It was something that came up a lot when people were answering was kind of, if I'm not a designer, then who am I? But I would challenge you to think about that maybe in the reverse. So if you have a friend who's, I don't know, an animator or something, if they then stop being an animator, you probably not see them very differently, or I'd hope you wouldn't. They would still be like your loud friend, or your hilarious friend, or your like thoughtful friend. You wouldn't be like my animator friend necessarily. So I think conflating creative work with identity is all part and parcel of this. But I think it's just worth like feeling a little bit more kind of compassionate towards yourself and seeing it from other people's like perspective, if that makes sense. It's card time again, if you're willing to keep playing this game. It might get quite annoying. But if you're a creative person, can you separate your creative output from your identity? If you can, if you're like, I'm a totally separate person, then green. Okay, this is a much more mixed bag. But you separators, why you are all anomalies, or this is all nonsense research, but it's good to know. So thank you very much, people that have participated. But this was one of the most kind of stark results that we had. Absolutely nobody that we surveyed elsewhere, so well done to you guys for having that separation. That's obviously very healthy, and that's perhaps why this room is so happy compared to most other people. But yeah, no one disagreed. No one felt that their identity was not directly tied to their creative work. And 94% of people in total, give or take a few percentage points. This maths took me ages, so let's hope it's correct. Yeah, 94% of people said that they either agreed or strongly agreed that their identity was tied with it. So I think that's quite telling. I think another reason as well that creative people are so disproportionately affected by mental sort of wellness problems is the vulnerability. Angela touched on this morning about that kind of sense of feeling quite vulnerable when you're putting work out into the world. And another speaker was talking about how when you kind of put things on social media, perhaps it can feel a little bit awkward or like a bit kind of showy, and there's that real like sensation about self-promotion, because it does feel strange, and it does feel like, I feel like maybe people in the creative industries are often quite introverted. They're not going to be the same people that are like jazz hands showing off about how great they are. They're perhaps not like natural business people and probably quite self-deprecating. I mean, obviously these are huge generalizations, but I think that can make it feel even more vulnerable to put your work out into the world. And even working on, say, a client brief or something in an agency, when your work gets rejected, it's very hard for that to not feel personal when you're getting criticisms thrown at you, because these are your ideas, these are your images or whatever that you've created that came out of you and didn't exist before. So it's quite hard to not take things personally and kind of like relentlessly get those knockbacks. Another reason is the idea of having sort of no off button or a constant background noise. What does this mean? The no off button thing, I mean, again, this has come up a lot, but that whole idea of ideas coming to you when you're in the shower, or like this dog in the bath. So sweet. It's so nice to see just lots of dogs here, by the way, as well. I've really enjoyed that. But yeah, the idea of using the whole world, I suppose, as inspiration comes up quite a lot. Maybe you're working on a branding project and you see a beautiful typeface on like a old bus or something like that. But there's inspiration everywhere, which is fantastic, but also fairly exhausting. And with the background noise thing, I've seen it time and again with people from all different kind of creative professions. Like my friend teaches film, and every time he goes to the cinema, he's analysing every single frame and kind of talking about, I don't even know what these were, like the blocks or continuity, and it's very, very exhausting to like constantly be doing that. And I write a lot about fonts and logos, and so I'm incredibly boring in a supermarket because I'll just be like, oh, that's, do you know what I mean? Like that was done by such and such, and it's dry as hell for everyone else in your life, but you can't really switch that off. Shouldn't this be fun? That building's having fun, isn't he? What I mean by this is that a lot of people will get into what they do because they enjoy, say, drawing, or they enjoy creative problem solving, or whatever it is, that's the reason they wanted to get into these jobs in the first place. Or they had like a natural aptitude for them. Perhaps as a child they were very good at art or something like that. And then when you start to do that for a job, it's going to naturally diminish that enjoyment or that passion. And I think, especially as, I can't speak for everyone, but especially as millennials, we were fed this idea of like following your dreams, that do what you love and all this sort of stuff. And I'm actually going to put it out there that there's an argument for actually not doing that, just for doing a job and then doing stuff like in your spare time that you enjoy. I don't think there's a perfect balance, but like my dad, for instance, well, he's retired now, but was like a gas engineer, so he'd by day mend boilers, but by night play in a pub rock band, the same band for 40 years. And it just meant that once that van is parked, once the knee pads are off, you're done. You're not thinking about boilers for the rest of the evening. You're just thinking about whatever it is that you're getting up to with your band or with whatever else in your life. So I think there's something to be said for kind of, yeah, just having a day job, honestly. I know that's not profoundly helpful here. Here's a man and a robot. I'm so sick to death, to be perfectly honest, of talking about AI. And I don't think I've got anything new to add to it. And also, this affects pretty much every industry. It's not just the creative industry, so I'm going to leave that there for now. But ultimately, all of these issues can be summed up with the title that we open with: Broke, Burned Out, and Brutally Online. So let's talk about being broke. Don't congratulate me just yet, but yeah, these are all actually, no, they're not all winning scratch cards. I thought these were all winning scratch cards, but it turned out I was just like slightly pissed when I did the word search one, so I thought I'd won a tenner. Nothing at all, very disappointing. But what I'm saying is, this was like 2 weeks ago or so, and I was absolutely broke. Just because someone's standing here and talking to you about things does not mean that like everything's going fantastic. Cost of living, the nature of being freelance, that feast and famine cycle. I think it's important that we're all quite honest with one another, but I was like so far over my overdraft that I was cashing in my scratch cards. I was taking 20 euros to the post office. And it's that kind of dip that I think is a very real stressor and a constant thing in the back of your head when you're freelance, because you just sometimes have no idea when an invoice might get paid, or when, like, you know, they say it's like men and buses, don't they? Like lots of work, no work, lots of work, no work. So that's a very real issue, and it's something that from the creatives that we spoke to, pretty much wherever people were in their careers, they felt that pressure to constantly produce, to kind of hustle, to like turn that hamster wheel relentlessly to sort of stay financially afloat. So, oh gosh, where are my numbers? 38 plus 32. 70? Is that 70? Yes, cool, thank you. So yeah, 70% of people either agreed or strongly agreed that they felt pressure to constantly hustle or overproduce. And as I say, it was completely across the board, not just people that were kind of new creatives or people that were freelance, but people who were working in agencies, agency owners. And I think this illustrator, who I love, put it quite well. He said, "I find it completely unacceptable that many clients of multi-billion-dollar media empires, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, etc., who expect work to be turned around the same day or overnight, while payment takes anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 months." And this point I love. Imagine the consequences I'd face as an individual if I loaded up a cart with groceries at Walmart and told the cashier that I'll pay for them in about 3 months, because that's how I've decided to set up my cash flow. So yeah, he makes a very good point, doesn't he? And why do we put up with this? He's saying no one is going to hold these Goliaths accountable for their payment practices. I truthfully don't know what to do about that, but faintly depressing, sorry for that. Let's talk about burnout now. So we use the phrase burned out quite a lot, or burnout. What does it even mean? Well, this is quite interesting. It is only related to, oh, that's nice and pixelated, isn't it? Cool. You graphic designers out there must be livid with this presentation. I'm so sorry. Yeah, not good. So it's only relating to work, so it's not classified as a medical condition, but a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress. The term burnout should not be applied to describe experiences in other areas of life. These are the characteristics here: feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, mental distance from one's job, feelings of negativism, I don't think I've said that word aloud, or cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. Do you want to do this card thing? Is it getting a bit dry? If you do, raise the green one. I'm joking. Have you ever experienced burnout? If you have, or you don't have to answer, as I say. If you have, raise the green. Oh, this is wild. Okay. There's like 2 or 3 reds out there. So many people have experienced burnout. Well, it's nice that at the beginning you all said you were doing good, because you're obviously a very optimistic bunch, or a big bunch of fibbers as well. So that completely chimes with the results of the survey that we did. Very telling that nearly 3/4 of people, so 74%, said that they had experienced burnout in their creative career at some point. And so I thought, this seems insane. Like, why is it so high? Is it that high across a bunch of other jobs? No. Nurses, and this was specifically relating to emergency room nurses, 30 to 50. Same for police people, same for firefighters, teachers slightly more. But that seems bonkers, doesn't it? That people that are literally like going into burning buildings and dragging people out of them, or people that are seeing people coming into the emergency room or things like that, are, less than half as likely as people in the creative industries to get burned out. That completely blows my mind. Brutally online. Now, this was very interesting, because I think we are always talking about how, the sort of perpetual, like, terrifying nature of social media and AI and all of this stuff. And yes, like, everything is terrible, but it's actually not affecting people, or from the people that we spoke to, as much as you might think. Most people are pretty neutral on this. I think perhaps we've settled into kind of accepting that this is the way things go, or perhaps we're just not using things like Instagram as much as before, or using them strictly professionally. I don't know why it's kind of come out like this. I was expecting it to be a lot higher, that people would agree or strongly agree, but way more people strongly agreed or disagreed than agreed that people were kind of affected by social media metrics when it came to the quality of their work. However, we all know that it is kind of a constant little thing in the back of your head quite often. I'm going to drink some water and let you read this. So this sort of sums it up. Social media can distort your sense of time and progress. When you're seeing thousands of other creative journeys unfold simultaneously, it's easy to feel like everyone else is moving faster or achieving more. An algorithm isn't a measure of artistic value. So I guess it's just a thing to kind of keep reminding ourselves. So all of this doom and gloom stuff, I suppose, leads us to, how can we solve it? How can we make space? I don't know why that's there, to be honest with you. I just thought it would liven it up. It's a deer mouse. Very cute indeed. How can we make space for mental well-being in the creative industries? And I've got 5 things that are probably faintly obvious, but do sort of bear repeating. So I think being open and transparent about what you're struggling with, why you're struggling, things like, because it can feel very embarrassing to be like, I have no motivation, or I'm totally broke. But it's really helpful because, as these sort of results have shown, there's probably a load of people who are feeling exactly the same way as you. So I think it is really important to find community. If you're really struggling, maybe that's community sort of online rather than in the real world. I don't know what the union situation is here, but I have found my union to be absolutely incredible. last year I was having a pretty crap time with one part-time job and sort of felt like I was going completely insane and bashing my head against a wall, and my union was absolutely incredible. And yeah, just sort of talking about things. I've got a big list of kind of resources and stuff, and there's a few like spreadsheets out there that people have filled in with like wages and like going rates for things, which I think are really helpful. But that sort of stuff often feels like it's being like hidden away from us. Like, how much is everyone else getting paid? How long does it take for everyone else to get paid? How are people getting this work? You know, that kind of it's not what you know, but who you know sort of situation, especially with the job market being so precarious. So I think just talking about stuff is really, really helpful. Cultivate outside interest. These are some suggestions of outside interest if you were a bit stuck and needed a hobby. I love the LARPing family. I got down a real rabbit hole of LARPing families. Super cool DJ guy, super cool rock and roll guys, woman laughing at a whisk. I think that's meant to represent baking, but they're just some ideas for you. And not only will that, I suppose, doing things that aren't related to work sort of help you in terms of just feeling a bit more well, there's also an argument that they'll ultimately help with your work as well. So this is from a lovely man called Jamie, who founded a studio based out in the west of England called Supple Studios. The best creatives don't live and breathe their day jobs. Their other interests inform the day job and make them better at what they do. So, coming back around again. This is all fairly obvious, but it does really bear repeating, and I've heard a few other people talking about this today. Just the basic stuff like having a routine, making sure you take breaks. Someone put it really well today. It was like, there's no shortcut to taking a break, which I thought was very true. You can't sort of outsource that, can you? You have to sleep at some point. You have to eat properly. You have to drink water, and you have to be a little bit more patient with yourself. I think there's that cliched expression or about, you know, talking to yourself like you'd talk to your friends. Like, I think we're all very mean to ourselves a lot of the time. If we're procrastinating, if we feel like we've done a rubbish job, like we give ourselves lots of messages that we would never give to other people. So I think just reminding ourselves of that. This lovely chap, Murray, who is a games designer now, just puts it really succinctly. Sleep, move your body, go outside, enjoy things. Seems radical, doesn't it? Enjoy things. Don't let the idea of algorithm and trends and discourse dictate your routine. This is not necessarily like a cheery one, but a lot of this is structural and par for the course if you are in a creative role. The kind of it's not you, it's them. Unfortunately, the creative industries are known for having crazy long hours, for being quite brutal, for having low pay, because I guess it takes advantage of the idea that a lot of people want these jobs, which isn't great, but I suppose it's kind of takes the pressure off individuals. And you can push back on things like, goes back to the union thing again, but you can push back on things like crazy long hours, because no one will say that your hours are 8 till 8, but there'll be that expectation there regardless, I think, sometimes. And Adrian Shaughnessy, who's a graphic designer and Unit Editions founder, also published a book called How to Be a Graphic Designer Without Losing Your Soul, puts it this way, so I'll let you read that one. So yeah, again, not cheerful, but quite well put, I think. And finally, I think redefining success. So bearing in mind that not everybody wants the same career pace or level of visibility. Success means different things to different people. Maybe it means for you kind of getting work that aligns with certain values or principles. Maybe it means getting enough work to spend more time with your family or your kids. Maybe it means earning a certain amount of money. Everyone's different and they're all absolutely fine. So I recently interviewed an illustrator and animator, a very lovely person called Justina Green, who is very upfront about lots of things. She makes lots of animations about periods and stuff, but we were talking about kind of making ends meet as a creative, especially like in the early years. And she was like, well, I still do my old job part-time. So she still works in comms and PR part-time, because that means she gets to choose the projects that she wants to do. She doesn't have to take everything that comes her way and kind of stress herself out by, making ends meet that way. It does mean she can be like quite selective and also learn new skills like animation and stuff. And I personally, I know this is not about me, but a few years ago, just after lockdown, I also just found myself going completely mad. I felt like something in my brain had like snapped and I just could not sit at a screen anymore. Even though my job is being a writer, I was just like not really wanting to write. I was like cleaning my toilet with a dinner knife instead of writing. And I was like, this means something. So I got a different job part-time, and now I cycle around sometimes taking tourists to go and see Big Ben or Buckingham Palace, and I love it, because it's the opposite of being a journalist. In a way, you're outside, you're sort of talking to people all day rather than being cooped up in your little flat all on your own. And it's exercise and it's fun, so once or twice a week I'll do a 3-hour bike tour, and it's also quite good money. It's honestly probably better money than journalism. It really is, though. If you get a Texan, then they tip big. So to end and sort of round this off, I wanted to draw your attention to this scene from The Wizard of Oz. So hopefully you've seen the film, but if not, then the kind of denouement comes at the end, where Dorothy and the Tin Man and the Lion and the Scarecrow have kind of traipsed through Emerald City. They're being set a ridiculous kind of series of tasks that are impossible to fulfill. And they're all trying to kind of appease this like terrifying, authoritarian, grandiose Wizard of Oz. And then the little dog Toto pulls back the curtain and reveals this massive figure to just be like a frantic little man pedaling away and turning wheels and pressing buttons. And I think this kind of sums up quite a lot of things that are helpful in light of what we've talked about. I think it's showing us that like things really are not as they seem, and if we consider these sort of massive design agencies or creatives or designers as like these big icons, we're all just little people like pedaling away with little wheels behind a curtain, aren't we? No one is like these sort of impenetrable, grandiose figures. It also kind of reminds us that what we see online or what is presented as success stories is actually a very tiny and very carefully curated version of reality. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors at play, like literally in this scene, but you know what I mean. And also remember that things like social media, we all do it. Like we only want to show people like what we show people. When that is your portfolio, you're not going to be putting the boring kind of bread and butter corporate stuff that you don't want people to see, and everyone's doing the same thing. It's no different for them as it is for you. And finally, I know this is quite cheesy, but they all got to this point and they all kind of get to where they need to be because they've all stuck together, this little ragtag bunch. You know, who would have thought that a scarecrow, a lion, a tin man, and just a nice girl from Kansas could all be chums? But they've stuck together through this, and I think creative careers can be very isolating if you're trying to do everything all on your own. So if you find peers and collaborators and community, then not only is the journey more fun, but it's more sustainable. You're not navigating the ups and downs by yourself, and I think when you work from home especially, it can be really easy to just sort of sequester yourself away in a stinky little hole. So ultimately, yes, surround yourself with good people, talk about things, and make sure that you're interacting with the world. I hope that wasn't too bleak, and I hope we have time for a few questions, I think, hopefully. If anyone has any, or comments, feel free, be brutal, I can take it. Hello.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your talk.
Pleasure.
I do really have like maybe even a few questions.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed all the topics that you've talked about, and my first idea was like, do you think that the whole discussion or topic about mental well-being in the creative industry, do you see it rather being taken from the bottom up, you know, like from individual designers or like freelancers or people who are really realizing this is on them, or is this something for managers of studios or bigger agencies?
That's such an interesting point, yeah. I think, yeah, management and kind of the industry more widely and sort of industry bodies should play a much bigger role. I think industry bodies should be a bit more like visible and do a bit more to kind of put like structural things in place so that people aren't getting just, you know, solve those problems with invoices or with long hours and all of that stuff. I don't think people should need sleep pods at work. I think they should go home to sleep. Do you know what I mean?
Cool. Like I also really like when you mentioned getting a day job and a hobby afterwards. My good friend he's a lawyer, and during evenings he's a DJ in a hotel like in a club,
Yeah.
which I think nobody knows in other way around.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to your book that you presented. Do you think that all those people you have there and the ways they were thinking creatively, how that would be affected, you know, like by the modern parts of the creative industry, like social media or, you know, like AI and these sorts of things? Would it be the same stories, or do you think that it would be radically?
That's such a good
shaped?
question. I honestly think that they'd probably still be really relevant. So I know someone else talked about David Lynch today, but that idea of kind of using transcendental meditation or sort of reaching into the depths of like your own self to find inspiration. I don't think you can't really prompt AI to meditate for you, can you? Or yeah, Sylvia Plath's one was quite interesting. It was just really like nuts and bolts, meat and potatoes, like sharing childcare with her husband and just having like a routine. And you need that whether or not you've got social media, I think, don't you?
Yeah. Okay. Do we have any questions in the audience?
Thank you for answering my questions with the cards. You've been very helpful. Appreciate it.
Perfect. If you then have a question maybe afterwards, I think that it's a great topic for the evening as well, I believe. And, thank you again one more time for the talk.
Oh,
And, we will continue shortly with another speaker. Thank you very much.
The upcoming talk has been brought to you with the support of Czech